So when you go see this stuff about calling black people niggers, and then you see the reaction, the disgusting, arrogant, fucking angry, fucking bullying reaction you get out of a fucking black cunt. And like, it's okay to see that, isn't it? It's fucking disgusting. It's just belittling of a fucking real fucking man. When if all you want to do is get your dick up our women, that means you're worth shit. You're worth nothing. You are worth shit, you black fucking piece of shit. And that comes in, oh yeah, you good. And just look at all the fucking, you stupid black cunt. You smelly black cunt. Look at you acting like a piece of shit now, you dirty nigger. You only get your head clopped off, you fucking black cunt. Oh, you called me nigger. Just wait, let's see the fucking video where the nigger's getting his head smacked in after he gets called a nigger. What? You can't accept that? Get your head smacked in. Do you like that? That's what I want to fucking see, you fucking black fucking shithead. You're causing all the injustice here, you stupid black fucking maggot, you fucking black cunt.
What? You got my nigga here? What? You gonna have to pay for my shit, cuz. Bitch ass nigga gonna. Oh, bitch. Bitch. I told y'all, cuz. All you had to do was talk about it before I kill this motherfucker, man.
Damn, you okay or no?
You started up already.
Damn. Shit. Shit. Damn.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, as a people, we have been thoroughly stripped of a knowledge of self, but at the same time, we are in a position where we can create whatever society we want to create. But first, we have to start understanding who we are. We have to be ready to stand up and protect each other. And as men, we do have to do better at protecting our women and children. Because if somebody can come in and harm your women and children anytime they want to, you can't have a community. But instead, we let white women play both sides of the fence. We give them a pass. And they are a major part of keeping white supremacy going. But that's because they know the system of white supremacy is designed to protect them. No matter how much you think they may like you, they don't want this system to be destroyed. They know all they have to say is a black man or even a black boy looked at my butt, and the mob is there ready to lynch somebody. Even if you kiss a white girl with consent, you could end up getting sentenced to 12 years in jail. Meanwhile, going all the way back into slavery, they can walk into our homes, rape our wives, our daughters, our mothers, and then face no consequences. When in reality, something like that should never happen while I'm still alive. And after hundreds of years, that does start to have an effect. Back in 1919, 100 years ago, during the Red Summer, the Longview Race Riot started because of a black man messing with a white woman, and it was consensual. Now, it started after a brother, Lemuel Walters, got beat up by two white boys because they found out their sister was in love with him. And the white girl said she would have married him if they were in the North. Now, after they beat this brother up, the police ended up arresting him for assault, but they were really charging him just for messing with a white girl. So then after they put him in jail, a lynch mob broke in and pulled him out of his cell. And then the next day he was found on the train tracks shot and killed. Now the black community, much like we do today, 100 years later, asked for an investigation, but nobody was ever charged or arrested. So then about a month later, the story of his brother Lemuel Walters' death was published in an article in the Chicago Defender. Now the story talked about how he had a consensual relationship with this white woman and how she loved him. But a lot of white people got offended at the notion that a white woman could love a black man. So then white residents started accusing another brother, Samuel Jones, of publishing the article because people knew he was a correspondent for the magazine. And even though he denied having anything to do with the article, the same two white boys that beat up this brother Lemuel Walters attacked his brother Samuel Jones. So then a black doctor named Calvin Davis took him back to his office and called for help from officials, but nobody came to help him. So then about 1 o'clock in the morning, about 15 white boys went to his house, but these two brothers were already expecting trouble. And they ended up getting about 25 armed brothers in the community to come help defend them. So when the white mob came trying to break into the house, these brothers started shooting back. And during the shootout, over 100 shots were fired and 3 white people ended up getting injured. And then these brothers were able to capture another white boy and they started beating him up and holding him hostage. And the rest of the mob was forced to run away. So then more and more white residents started gathering. And at one point it reached 1,000 people and they started breaking into hardware stores, looking for more guns and ammunition. And then about 4 o'clock in the morning, 1,000 people went back to this brother Dr. Davis' house, but everybody had already left. So then the mob just burnt his house down and burnt the neighbor house down. And the mob also burned down the black dance hall for no reason. And when they got to Calvin Davis' house, they burnt his house down. But his wife and children who were home was able to get away. And then the mob burned down his car. Then they burned down his doctor's office. And when his 60-year-old father-in-law, Marion Bush, was approached by the sheriff the next night, they claimed he shot at the cop and ran out the house. A Dallas newspaper reported that white citizens hunted him down and shot and killed him in a cornfield. And there's no telling what they did to the 60-year-old man. Eventually, martial law was declared, and 160 soldiers and Texas Rangers had to come in. Both the brother Samuel Jones and Dr. Calvin Davis had to leave town. And when the soldiers came in, they ended up arresting 21 black men and took them to an Austin prison so they wouldn't be lynched. And they told those brothers, even though they may not have been involved, to never come back to Longview again. And of course, nobody was punished because white supremacy is not punishable in America. But if we're going to learn anything from them, we need to learn how to protect our women the same way. We can't let them come in and violate our women or violate our children or elderly. 100 years later in San Antonio, Texas, a sister, Natalie Simms, had a tampon pulled out of her on the side of the road by the police. Now let's go back and see how this sister could end up getting sexually assaulted on the side of the road.
Tomorrow, San Antonio City Council is expected to talk about whether or not to settle a lawsuit filed against its police department by a San Antonio woman who says she was illegally searched on the side of the road. This happened back in 2016. The lawsuit was filed early last year in federal court. We've gotten a lot of web traffic on this story and a lot of questions about whether the Texas Tort Claims Act applies to this lawsuit. We spoke to a number of local attorneys, and it turns out it does not. This is a Section 1983 lawsuit, what is called a federal civil rights lawsuit. The plaintiff in this case, a woman named Natalie Simms, says that a female San Antonio police officer actually pulled out a tampon and then searched her vaginal cavity looking for most likely drugs. This happened in public, on the side of the road, and without the consent of Simms. Simms had agreed to let San Antonio police search her vehicle and even look her over for whether or not she had any kind of illegal substance. But according to the lawsuit, did not give the female officer permission to actually search inside of her and certainly did not give her permission to remove her tampon. Because the lawsuit has not been formally settled, the city considers it pending litigation and will not comment. But I think there are 3 things to keep in mind when discussing why the city ultimately settled this lawsuit. 1, the search was done in front of male officers and in public. So even though a female officer was brought in and conducted the actual vaginal cavity search, male officers were able to see what was going on. Another important factor, Simms was not under arrest but did not think she could leave the scene until she allowed officers to not only search her vehicle but then look her over for whether or not she had anything illegal on her, which according to records she did not. She was allowed to leave the scene in her own vehicle and was never taken into custody and booked on charges related to this incident. And factor number 3, and that this is very important, is the embarrassment factor. The fact that this was, again, done in public, not in private. Simms repeatedly asked to be taken to headquarters and have the search done there. The female officer said that was not going to happen. Again, male officers were in the area.
An update on a lawsuit filed against the city of San Antonio over an inappropriate strip search. Council members vote to settle with a woman who claimed a former San Antonio police detective pulled down her shorts and searched her body for drugs. The council approved a $205,000 payout to the woman. In a statement, the city attorney said, "We were able to resolve this matter with this proposed settlement and believe it to be in the best interest of all involved."
Now, this sister Natalie Simms was just sitting on the side of the road, minding her own business, waiting on her boyfriend, not breaking any laws. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the police pull up on her and then start asking to search her car for drugs. Now, if the laws did apply equally, she didn't have to consent to any search. They didn't even pull her over. They just randomly pulled up on her and asked to search her for no reason. But she said she felt threatened and thought she wouldn't be able to leave if they didn't search her. And of course, this sister knew she didn't have anything. So after the cops searched her car and didn't find anything, a female cop, Mara Wilson, started to search her. Now, they're not finding any drugs. The sister is compliant, but they were determined to find a way to violate her and violate her rights. So then after this cop, Mara Wilson, searched her pockets, she told her to spread her legs. And the sister didn't consent to that, but she said she was just going to look and not reach. So then on the side of the road in front of 5 male officers, she opened up this sister's pants and pulled down her underwear and used the flashlight to look in her vaginal area. Then out of nowhere, this cop reached in this sister's pants and pulled out a bloody tampon. And when the sister asked her why she would do that, she said, "I thought something was in there." And then the sick cop, Mara Wilson, started talking about the tampon, talking about it looked hairy, and then told his sister to turn around and kept searching her. She assaulted this woman against the law, against her will, without a warrant, without consent, on the side of the road in front of 5 male cops. And then trying to have a conversation with her at the same time like it's normal, like it's 18, 19 or something. And to them, it is. And this sister even asked to go to the police station so she wouldn't be violated on the side of the road. But they wouldn't even let her do that. And of course, they never found anything. And she was able to just drive away. But now this sister got assaulted and all she got was a small settlement. And of course, nobody has been punished and everybody still involved is out there patrolling the streets. And I don't know where her boyfriend was, but he wasn't able to be there on time. But do you think the Me Too movement is going to come to the sister's defense? You don't hear any of those groups speaking up for this sister. Because it's up to us to protect our women and to protect ourselves. Just like they do by any means necessary, even when a white woman consent. In another part of Texas, in a small town, a brother Rodney Reed has been on death row for 21 years for messing with a white girl. Now, let's see how this brother ended up on death row.
New developments in the case of a man on Texas death row. Attorneys for Rodney Reed say there's new evidence which could help their case to exonerate him. KXAN's Amanda Brandeis has the latest.
For nearly 19 years, Rodney Reed has never backed down from saying he's innocent in the death of 19-year-old Stacey Stites. She was killed in 1996, her body found on a rural road just north of Bastrop.
I have to maintain my faith and my hope, you know what I'm saying? You know, a lot of the young people out there, it would give me a lot of hope and supporters and stuff like that, you know.
His lawyers believe the real killer is Jimmy Fennell, a former Giddings police officer who was engaged to Stites. The defense says new evidence may prove Fennell committed the crime. They've received an audio recording between the widow of a murdered Giddings police officer and investigators. The widow said before her husband was killed, he was conducting an independent homicide investigation on Fennell. According to the woman, her husband believed Fennell killed Stites.
I think the best case scenarios would be to discover any sort of actual physical evidence, whether it be notes, notebooks, files, anything that points to where his investigation was going.
While the new evidence is promising, she says the case is wearing on his family.
They are tired. They want their loved one to come home, and they're a little bit beaten down by the process as it's gone forward.
But for now, there's no way of knowing when it will be over. Amanda Brandeis, KXAN News.
And there's no deadline for the court to make their decision. Reed's attorneys hope they'll either exonerate him or give him a new trial.
Now, back in 1996, this white woman, Stacey Stites, ended up getting murdered. Now, it turns out this white woman was having an affair with this brother, Rodney Reed. And we all know how forbidden that is, especially in a small town in Texas. Now, after she was killed, of course they tried to say she didn't know this brother at all. But so many witnesses say they saw them together. Now, this white woman was engaged to a white cop, Jimmy Fennell. But when they did the autopsy, they found his brother Rodney Reed DNA. Now, this cop, Jimmy Fennell, was already abusive. And this white woman always said if he ever found out she was having an affair, especially with a black man, he was going to kill her. This cop was even the first suspect, and he failed multiple lie detector tests when they asked him was he involved in her death. Instead, when they found his brother Rodney Reed DNA, they automatically made him the #1 suspect and arrested him. And of course, he didn't get a fair trial. They hid evidence. Even his own defense didn't call his witnesses. And they didn't even use his alibi. They didn't even have the correct time of death to make him a suspect in the first place. And a lot of witnesses say they were threatened not to testify. And those who were willing to testify wasn't allowed to testify. Her fiance, Jimmy Fennell, said she was kidnapped on her way to work. but forensics say she was killed before she ever left the house. They claim her car was stolen and they strangled her to death with a belt, but they never tested the belt for DNA, and the car didn't have anybody's fingerprints but this white woman and the cop. And on top of that, her autopsy isn't consistent with somebody who was strangled. They say it looked more like somebody who was drowned to death, which goes against his story. Even the cops who were investigating said the evidence was leading towards this cop, Jimmy Fennell. But mysteriously, at least 2 of the cops who started saying this brother Rodney Reed was innocent ended up murdered. One of them they claimed was a suicide. But despite all of this, they charged him with her murder and the jury found him guilty. And they ended up sentencing him to the death penalty. They claim this brother Rodney Reed has a history of violence and he has other accusations against him. But this brother has never been convicted of anything. And he was never charged for anything he was ever accused for. Meanwhile, this cop, Jimmy Fennell, ended up raping another woman while he was on duty and got convicted and was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
The former Georgetown police officer released from prison after serving 9.5 years for kidnapping and raping a woman he'd arrested. The family of his murdered fiancée is cheering his new freedom, insisting he's not a killer.
Jimmy is not guilty of this. He didn't murder my sister. Jimmy loved my sister and was going to be a good husband.
But not all members of Stacey Stites' family are convinced. He was the first person of interest in his fiance's murder, and attorneys for the man who was convicted of the crime, Rodney Reed, are trying to reignite that suspicion. KXAN's Brittany Glass traveled to Huntsville for Fennell's release.
More than 20 years after her sister's murder, Deborah Oliver says her family has been silent long enough.
They were very happy together. They were looking forward to getting married. And never have we thought that Jimmy was guilty of murdering my sister ever.
Loved ones of Stacey Stites say they stand by the man she was about to marry.
Let him go have a life and leave him alone. Absolutely.
Even though Jimmy Fennell would go on to commit a separate violent crime.
We know that he made a mistake. He's served his time. He's paid his commitment to society. And it's time for him to start a new life.
Oliver says the back and forth speculation about her sister's killer needs to stop.
To constantly have people look at you as if, you know, did you kill your fiance when you know that you didn't? I can't even imagine what that would be like.
But another family member doesn't see things that way. Cousin Heather Stobbs was disowned after supporting Rodney Reed, the man sentenced to death for Stites' murder. Stobbs says there are too many unanswered questions in the case. Questions about evidence.
If you can't have the time of death, then you don't have Rodney Reed doing it. You have Jimmy Fennell doing it. And that just makes more sense.
Stobbs says Reed deserves another trial.
Why can't it just be redone? You can't put somebody to death and then just wonder and wonder and wonder.
But both women agree on one thing. The focus should be on the victims.
Aside from Rodney Reed, that there's another victim, and it's Jimmy Fennell's victim.
Too long we've been trying to fight for justice for Rodney, who didn't deserve justice at all. We need justice for Stacey. We need justice for the victims.
In Huntsville, Brittany Glass, KXAN News.
Rodney Reed was convicted of Stites' murder and sentenced to death. An appeals court stayed his execution just days before it was to take place in 2015, and the stay remains. A visiting judge who presided over Reed's latest hearing in October made a recommendation to the Court of Criminal Appeals that he not get a new trial. A final decision from the court is expected soon.
Now, even this white woman's sisters are making an excuse for this white cop. This white boy raped another woman while he was arresting her. And they're talking about leave him alone, let him live his life in peace. But making sure to say this brother Rodney Reed doesn't deserve justice, this rapist cop does. She's willing to look past this white boy killing her sister because she doesn't want it to be true that her sister could have an affair with a black man. Even some of their family members know this brother Rodney Reed is innocent, but their family ended up disowning them just for them saying that. And still today, they never tested the belt that was the murder weapon for fingerprints or DNA. 3 forensic experts say the time of death is off. 4 different doctors concluded that Rodney Reed's guilt was medically and scientifically impossible. But none of that matters to them. They still put this brother on death row for having an affair with a white woman who was married to a cop. And he was already supposed to be executed, but he was granted a stay. And now this brother is set to be executed in November, and they refuse to give him a retrial, despite all the evidence. But that's because it's not about right or wrong. It's about being on code. It's about maintaining a system. And they understand if you harm their women or children, it has to be consequences. But we have to understand that. If they harm our women, our children, our elderly, our brothers, it doesn't matter. There has to be consequences. And until we punish those that harm us, they're going to keep doing the same things over and over. At the end of the day, we are all we got. And if we don't get on code and do what we have to do, then the same thing will keep happening.
And I'm telling you, if you ever disrespect any of the goddamn women, I'm gonna whoop your motherfucking ass. Okay, no, I'm talking, motherfucker. Okay, I'm sorry. You showed out. I know goddamn where you saw. That was a 10-year-old little girl. Now I'm 40 goddamn 4 years old. Now cuss me out. That's what you do, motherfucker.
Hey man, hey,
No, don't come in. I'm telling you, no. You can stop. No. Okay, well, you ain't got to yell, but I'm telling you, my daughter is 10 years old. And now I'm 44 years old. Hold up. Don't touch me no more now. I'm telling you. Now, my daughter 44 years old. No, I'm 44. And my daughter 10. You won't disrespect her no more. You hear me? Okay, you won't disrespect her no more. Today will be your last day in your own shop. They cut. Hold on. Don't put your hands on me. I walk in here and I'm going to walk back out. Okay, but I'm telling you, but you coming in trying to touch me ain't going to work either. This ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. Let me tell you something. You know me, but you may not know me. Don't put your hands on me. Ask me to walk out of here. All right? But don't grab me.
I asked you 3 times.
If I ask you something 3 times, you like if I grab you? Because your gun in your bag don't scare me. It's going to make you do right.
Whatever you want to do.
Shit, you damn right whatever I want to do. But you don't fuck up no more.
You don't actually can't.
And you need to stop touching my phone.
Are you a real person? You really want to be an internet person?
You cannot be serious right now.
You're breaking law right now. You're on private property.
What's the law being broken?
What's the law?
You're on private property.
Doing what?
Ma'am, if you don't move out the way, we are moving things in, so you should move out the way.
Okay.
Greg.
Guys, just come on.
Excuse us.
You are trespassing. You do not live here, and you're unwilling to show ID. So.
You're a cop?
You cannot be serious. I can't believe this is happening.
Oh my God.
Come on in, sir. Ma'am, if you could please move out the way. We have people that are moving in furniture. Okay.
My friend, just let her do her thing, and when the cop comes and tells her to go away. So.
Who has this kind of time?
I'm gonna get this done, and then this is 8 o'clock.
No one's changing anything, Kathy. You're the one that's up here making up stories and won't move out the doorway.
What's her name, Kathy?
It's on Ashton, and there's an entrance there, and that's where they're coming in. Yeah, and they're refusing to show me ID. And
Yeah, because I don't have to show you anything.
She has, no business being on the property because she doesn't live there.
You have no business being here right now.
And they're on private property right now.
Apartment buildings aren't private properties.
Yes.
If we have permission from a tenant, we can come and go as we please.
And the status with the city right now is that they can't take new tenants to this.
I cannot
believe. But the tenant already lives here.
She's already in here, ma'am.
They're moving her furniture in, you idiot.
She won't tell me the unit number, but she said she was moving in. It's like an apartment complex. So
Your dogs are cute,
it's
though.
being, I guess, bulldozed. I mean, I don't really know. They're going to do construction, and basically they evicted everybody who's not rent controlled. There's like 7 of us who are rent controlled.
Oh, that's what it is. She's getting evicted. She's mad that she got kicked out.
Investigation with the
This is a personal thing.
Which has
no, it's actually not.
nothing to do with me.
This has nothing to do with you. This is someone who lives here. We're bringing her furniture
There
in.
is not, actually. And it's,
Hello?
there is not. No, there's not. And they're under investigation right now with the city. And this is part of the issue is that they've been trying to rent the units.
Hey, what's up, man? Is it possible that we do this tomorrow? I'm in the middle of something helping out a friend.
This girl, she won't show me. She won't tell me who she is. She won't show me ID. She said that she's living and she said she has a key, but she is not an actual tenant of this property. And
That works, that's
they're
fine.
sitting on private property right now. They won't tell me who they are.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Ma'am, because it's none of your business. That's why we have a key and we have the right to be here.
don't
You
have
haven't
the
shown
right
me
to
any
be
ID, have you? Where's your ID? What's your unit number? What's your social security? Since you want to ask information.
So she's yelling at me saying I don't have a right to be on this property.
No one said that. You can do what you want. You don't have a right
Literally,
to stop
I'm
us from
recording. So
breaking-
you making up lies to the cops?
She's recording me.
I am
She's
recording
actually on
you.
private property recording.
Yeah.
It's against the law.
It's not.
They're laughing.
2-0.
Because
She wants to be famous because she wants
Right.
to be famous for being a racist idiot. Because people, you know,
Okay.
because she hasn't seen enough white people's lives get ruined.
Happening.
She wants to be part of the trend. Please post this everywhere.
Oh, I am.
Because I think it's hilarious. It's probably the funniest thing that's happened to me in a long time. I didn't actually, I mean, I've seen the videos. I didn't think it was like a thing. But seeing this ridiculous human being actually existing in the world is funny to me.
I just can't believe this.
Are
right
they
now.
on their way?
So can you move out the way now?
No.
Okay. Well, let me go get
You actually can't go. They said you
She
have to.
has a
Ma'am,
key.
you're going to stop trying to put yourself in front of me? I don't have to show you anything.
This is not a secret. This is her furniture. Whoever she's calling, I don't know.
And that's actually one of the reasons we talked with the city. The problem is, please stop recording on private property. You can be arrested for this.
No, she can't because you can record police. You're not police, so you can shut up.
You actually can't on private property.
Actually,
It's against
you
the law. If
can.
you're on the sidewalk, she can record whatever she wants.
Ma'am, I can record wherever I am.
Okay, fine. Oh, I'm
Even
giving-
the
I'm
dogs
giving my
are like,
consent.
why?
I'm giving my consent.
Even her dogs are like, why are you
Okay, so
doing
here's
that?
the thing.
They be trying to go to the bathroom, and she's
We're
up here
bringing her
acting a fool.
furniture. Why do we have to tell you that? Who are you? We don't have to.
You're trespassing.
We are not trespassing.
So we're trespassing by bringing furniture? We're trespassing. No, wait. No, Rita. We're trespassing in your work model. We may be a threat, whatever you may think. We're bringing because it's a logically inconsistent ridiculousness.
I've
of what
never
you're
seen
doing.
you before in my life.
No. It's you taking to your world.
Oh.
Well, we're blocking you now.
Well, you were.
Got it.
Oh.
Bye. You look stupid. You're gonna be famous. I
Oh,
hope
now
so.
you want to leave.
Bye. Ridiculous human being.
I got a student up here at Mesa View that is refusing to do anything anybody says.
That's the voice of Farmington police officer Zachary Christensen, who walked the halls of Mesa View as a resource officer for the past 4 years. Here, he's talking about a 6th grade student who's in trouble.
This morning, she went straight to the cafeteria. She took more milks than she was supposed to. She threw a milk on the ground.
At this point, the girl is waiting for her mom to pick her up. We are concealing her face and identity because she's a minor.
The vice principal and principal have been following her around.
According to Officer Christensen's field report, the child assaulted 2 school employees. But take a look at the lapel camera footage. This is what the officer claimed was the first assault, as the student walks past the assistant principal. And this is what the officer says was the second assault.
Can't push him out of the way.
The girl tries to move past the principal to open the door. Then, Officer Christensen loses his patience.
Okay, I've had enough of this. Take your bag off. Take your bag off. You're done. You're done. You're done. You're not going to assault the principal.
The officer's lapel camera is knocked to the ground, but a school employee repositions it, capturing what happens next.
Put your arms behind your back. Put your arms behind your back.
Ow! You hit my arm! Get off me! Ow!
Yes.
My arm!
Yes, I actually had a sub just come.
Turn over! Turn over! Yes. Do not resist! Do not resist! Stop resisting!
Get off me! Ow!
Stop resisting!
Please stop resisting.
Stop resisting!
Just stop, man.
Stop resisting! Stop! Put your arms behind your back!
Zach, let's let her stand up.
A school administrator continues telling the officer to allow the girl to get up.
Officer Christensen, she is not a threat to yourself or others at this moment. You need to allow her to stand, sir.
In the report, the officer writes, quote, "She was very strong, stronger than I was." Again, a school employee tells the officer this has gone too far.
Sir, we are not going to use excessive force to get this done.
We're not excessive.
Yes, it is.
She's an 11-year-old girl, and it's a shock to the system to see that this is a thing that can occur at a school by a certified peace officer.
Attorney Mark Kernut is representing the student and her mother. They're now taking legal action against both the city of Farmington and the school.
When you have a situation where there's a report that says a felony is committed, another felony is committed, and then you review the factual documentation you have of that through the video, and it doesn't add up, then there must be a level of accountability.
When I contacted the Farmington Municipal School District, a spokesperson told me they could not comment on pending litigation nor on personnel matters. However, they did send us this brief statement, quote, "The safety of our students and staff is one of our highest priorities." Meanwhile, at Farmington Police Headquarters, Chief Stephen Hebby tells us this video immediately triggered an internal investigation into Officer Christensen's conduct.
I was angry. You know, that's not our standards. That's not who we are. That's not how we train.
Why are you pushing me?
Because you are not free to leave now.
Why?
Because.
Why?
I said so. You're being charged.
Okay, well, give me
with
my
assault, with resisting.
Those charges against the student ultimately didn't stick, and Officer Christensen was placed on administrative leave the very next day. What would you say to those folks who see an officer, someone in a position of power, taking those actions?
Stuff like this is tough for the citizens to take. There's no doubt about it. As a chief, you know darn well that this is a failure for us.
Our 4 Investigates team has learned following the department's internal review, Officer Christensen was slapped with 2 violations for violating use of force policy and for unsatisfactory performance.
It's such a mess because we didn't follow the things that we know we should have been following. You know, we've been training on this. We talk about de-escalating. We talk about slowing things down. You know, and that didn't happen here.
Was he up to date on his training?
He was.
Still, the chief says the department moved quickly to discipline the officer.
Unfortunately, we did view the discipline as likely to be very serious, and the officer separated effective October 1st.
So he resigned?
He did.
Now, I spoke with Officer Christensen on the phone. He did not want to comment. Now, it's important to note that he has not been criminally charged, but this case has been referred to the San Juan County District Attorney's Office to consider possible charges.
A San Antonio police officer is accused of attacking 2 women in their car.
You're supposed to protect and serve, not injure.
They say the officer threw his flashlight at them, shattering the windshield. Eyewitness News reporter Sharon Coe tells us it all started with the officer directing traffic.
My skin is burning. All I was trying to ask him is why would he bust the window?
Nikita Palmer cut up by glass.
It's just wrong that he thinks that he can get away with this and he honestly can't, Deja.
This is video and pictures from last Thursday night.
Yeah, like around 11.
These 2 women say they were driving on East Houston Street on Popgun Drive when they saw an officer directing traffic because of an accident.
And we were going to ask him, which detour would you like us to go? We can't understand what you're doing, just swinging your flashlight.
The next thing they saw.
And when the flashlight hit, all the glass from there came forward at me. There's still fragments here on the floor.
Then they say the insults came spewing out.
You idiots, you morons. You're the 3rd ones to do this today. Do you guys not understand English? Do you guys not know how to drive? What's wrong with you?
The women say they pulled over to talk to the officer. Palmer says the officer began questioning them.
Yeah, I have my license with me. Okay, but no, you have to have a reason to want my license.
I have a reason.
Okay, so tell me.
I'm going to give you 3 tickets.
The impact was initially.
SAPD says an investigation is now underway. It plans to review the officer's body camera and talk to witnesses to determine if there will be disciplinary action.
He needs to know how to treat everyone, not just, oh, I'm an officer, so I have the authority to treat you like you're nothing. I thought that he's shot or something. I understand what it is. I feel like if he's that angry towards 2 females who wasn't being aggressive, how would you be with anybody else on the street?
An employee at a Subway in Noonan has been suspended after allegedly calling 911 on a family out of fear that they were going to rob the place. The family was visiting Georgia from North Carolina, and they claim it was a case of racial profiling. Tae Sung Moy from our sister station in Greensboro has the story.
It is not okay, and we won't tolerate it.
It's a vacation the Dobson family won't ever forget. The family from Winston-Salem spent the weekend in Georgia celebrating their grandmother's 81st birthday and stopped at a Subway in Newman, Georgia on their way back.
We walk in, we pay for our subs, we sit down, we have those. We ask for cups of ice because, you know, you travel with kids, you have juice.
After they were done eating, Mom Felicia says she told everyone to use the bathroom before they left. Little did they know the store employee had frantically called 911.
They need to go. They just need to go.
There's a customer that's been in there for a while?
No, it's not a customer. There's about 8 people in a van that have been in the store for about an hour. They keep going back and forth to the bathrooms by my back door.
In the call, the employee also accuses the family of filling their water cups with soda. An officer arrived minutes later.
And he said, she said, you look suspicious. She's been robbed before, and she thought you were going to rob her again.
Husband and wife, sister and 4 children. I don't know where she gets we were going to rob her from.
Absolutely ridiculous.
19-year-old Deja says the whole situation made her heart stop.
So many stories have been out about police brutality, and I really felt that my father and my family could be in danger.
The officer apologized and let them go, but the Dobsons can't stop thinking about it.
But we're Christian people, we walk in love. We pray for her to have a turnaround.
And in response to this story, Subway released a statement saying it is our expectation and each franchisee's goal to make sure that every guest will always be treated with respect and integrity that they deserve. The franchisee has personally apologized to the family, and the employee in question has been placed on leave until a full review is completed.
Well, it's happened again. A high school student in blackface, and her video is going viral. And now Mansfield ISD is apologizing for it. Good evening. I'm Chris Lawrence.
And I'm Cynthia Aguirre. As the district investigates this video, the student who saw the video and posted it is talking to WFAA's Lauren Zakalik.
Mansfield ISD says it's a Lake Ridge High School student in that video using a racial slur and appearing in blackface. Now, it didn't happen on campus, but the district is taking a stand against the behavior and the speech in that video.
Oh, this is disgusting.
Wearing a sweatshirt that says clickbait, this Mansfield student appears on camera, squeezing a bottle of black paint and putting it all over her face. It is this video Mansfield ISD is condemning. The video included a student in blackface and a racial slur, the principal wrote to parents this week. There is no acceptable excuse or explanation for behaviors or speech that promote racism. These behaviors do not reflect who we are or aspire to be at Lake Ridge and will not be tolerated.
I saw the video and I was just completely appalled.
Alan Fan is a Lake Ridge student who saw the video on an app called TikTok. He posted it to Twitter because it made him angry.
It's 2019. A video of that nature is just completely unacceptable. Like, how are we supposed to move forward as, like, a society if we have constant reminders of the past?
It's stupid. It's just flat out stupid.
Mansfield ISD parent Kenna Aguzzi disappointed to hear a student in her community would act this way.
You can't even call it ignorance because it's impossible to be ignorant of that in this day and age.
Mansfield ISD is a diverse district. About 33% of students are white, 30% are black, 25% Hispanic, and about 7% are Asian. The district says the off-campus incident would be handled according to the district code of conduct. The principal telling parents, "We are better than this." Not a single board member returned our email for comment.
That's a hobby horse right there. Remember that stick with the horse on it?
Oh, yeah, I think I had one of those.
Yeah, they gathered for the annual Hobby Horse Championships. And an estimated 1,000 spectators watched, about 200 people. The riders, by the way, almost all girls between 10 and 18 years old.
And they're taking this seriously. If you look at their faces, they're not smiling.
Man,
this is intense. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, prints. Look at the prints.
Oh, this is great. This is great.
So they actually do this. They simulate traditional equestrian events like dressage and show jumping. The vast majority of the hobby horses are handmade, colorful creatures, complete with names like Chattanooga Choo Choo and Panda. They're exchanged and sold by owners at events and through social media. Some of them have been known to fetch more than $200.
Somebody watching Emerson. She's putting Emerson and Leslie. Leslie's a jail.